has been so improbable, the impossible has happened. This one by Mattingly. Oh, hang on to the roof. Goodbye, home run. Don Mattingly. Tuck waits one. Deep left field. Down the line. That ball is out of here. Out of here. He's gone.
What's going on, everybody? We're here live for a mini episode talking all things Tatsuya Imai. As always, I'm Steve, joined my tag team partner, Devin. What's going on, man?
What's up? Happy New Year, everybody. We are getting 2026 started with a big signing. I think everyone anticipated we might get this news today, at the latest tomorrow. And sure enough, pretty early in the day, we have some Tatsuya Imai news.
For sure. And we got this reported, as Devin mentioned earlier on the day, 3 years, $54 million contract, according to John Heyman of the New York Post, with a deal capable of reaching $63 million through the performance incentives. So we have the opt-outs after each season. This gives Imai the flexibility to re-enter the market, similar to Murakami, who, established himself at a major league level. We'll see him be able to test the market, get paid big. But the incentives, Devin, are tied to the workload. He's eligible to earn an additional $3 million per year upon reaching some innings threshold. But the real conversation here is the Houston Astros entering as this mystery team. There are a lot of teams in on Imai's services. We knew the deadline was approaching. We had the Yankees throwing their hat in the ring, the Mets, the Cubs, the Phillies, the O's, of course, but the Houston Astros are the ones that are getting his services for 2026.
Yeah, we just had an episode the other night where we talked at length about Tatsuya Imai's market and how it was kind of mysterious, similar to Murakami's. And we talked a little bit about the possibility of a surprise team. And we mentioned the Orioles, maybe. I know the Braves had been brought up by quite a few people. The Astros were not somebody we brought up, not somebody that I really heard anybody bring up, to be completely honest. I've even seen a few of their fans' reactions, like happy, but also completely surprised. With that being said, a completely necessary move for them. When you look at it, last year, their rotation was absolutely ravaged by Tommy John. Okay, you had Ronel Blanco go down pretty early in the season. We'll miss, I'm guessing, at least half of 2026. Hayden Wesneski, who was acquired in the Kyle Tucker deal. Same thing. Brandon Walter, who had been a nice bright spot in the second half, University of Delaware product. Shout out to our Blue Hens. And Luis Garcia, thought they got him back, and then they lost him again. And obviously, Post-Valdez, there's a 99.9% chance that he is gone from Houston. So you look at that rotation, you got Hunter Brown at the top. That's not too bad. Christian Javier, who is returning or has returned. If he can find his old form, you can do a lot worse as the number 2 starter than Christian Javier. Tatsuya Imai might kind of spot right in that number 3 or 4 spot, obviously depending on performance. Mike Burrows, who they just acquired, Lance McCullers, who kind of was back and forth last year, back in the rotation, out again, back in the rotation. We'll see if offseason can get him completely healthy. Mike Burrows acquired in the Pittsburgh deal. So, I mean, you look at that rotation, I think it's solid. I don't think necessarily it's super sexy, but I think you add Imai in there and his talent and his potential. And if you're a Houston fan, you have to be a little bit happier today than you were yesterday.
Yeah, and I think obviously you mentioned Houston's perspective. This signing feels like a looming rotation need for them. We know exactly what they are trying to do. They were a mystery team. I think a lot of people thought they were out because of the fact that obviously they're trying to cut costs because we look at the direction they're going. But Post-Valdez is the biggest piece here. He's leaving, going for a significantly larger contract elsewhere. And I think part of this, it kind of gives them the 1-2 punch that they've been missing. I think they were expecting to have a full season of those guys you were mentioning, but with Hunter Brown obviously breaking out in 2025, he finished 3rd in AL Cy Young voting behind, all those guys. He easily could have been the AL Cy Young somewhere down the line, but this is a rotation right now that if they want to get back to the postseason, they missed the postseason for the first time in 9 years last season. This is a team that is used to a high level of success, and for a down year finishing 87 and 75, like a lot of teams would sign off on that. But I think getting the high upside at a relatively team-friendly cost that everyone was discussing of, we look at the projections of these future contracts for these players, people were off about what these recent deals were going to look like for the players transitioning from the leagues that are international. And I don't know. I mean, $18 million per year with performance-based escalators and the annual opt-outs. I think the contract balances risk and upside for both the player and the organization. I like this for the Houston Astros. I really do. You mentioned some of those guys in that. I mean, Hunter Brown is the clear ace. And if Imai emerges, I guess the high ceiling for him is he could be potentially a number two. But also, like you said, if he slots into 3 or 4, you had Mike Burrows, of course, in that deal, in that 3-way deal where we saw Brandon Lau move. But, Nate Pearson's over there. You mentioned Lance McCullers Jr., Spencer Arrighetti. These are kind of this depth they're trying to figure out a rotation. It's deeper, it's more stable. And is it the best rotation in the American League? No, but it makes you ask the question, especially on my side, on your side, as a fan of the Yankees and the Mets. And it's just like, for that amount of money, I was looking at the contracts for last year. The Yanks were paying Marcus Stroman $18.5 million. So why not take the risk on a player like Imai where the ceiling feels like it's there? We talked about his season. I understand there's a translation to the stuff, right? Like we talk about all the stuff, but if you look at the raw stuff, we've discussed it extensively. I mean, last season was a great season for him. And I understand there is some lag between getting from the MPB to MLB, and there is a lot of that. But the risk is worth it here, especially for the price of starting top line pitching. And Imai has the potential to be that. He's not at that yet, but he has to prove it. And certainly both sides are hoping for it.
Yeah, like a younger dude, 27 years old, with that type of potential, with that kind of stuff, it is shocking. I mean, Lance Brozdowski, who does a great job covering mostly pitching on Twitter, and he works for the Cubs as well. He's all over the place. He tweeted out, "I think this is a reflection of the hesitancy in how Imai's stuff will translate rather than a bear market indicator. The public loved him. Team sources I spoke with skewed skeptical. That said, how did nobody else beat this contract?" That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, the skepticism seems to be alive and well with some of the players coming over NPB. And I said this last episode, I kind of understood, not kind of, I very much understood the skepticism about Munetaka Murakami because of those giant whiff numbers, right? And in zone contact trouble. So that kind of made sense. This guy, he's gotten better every single year. Command is his main issue, which he improved on vastly this past season. And I get those ERA numbers in MPB are a lot lower than they would be here because of a dead ball issue. And there's, probably overall more talent in MLB. With that being said, NPB, I think is, some people like to call it AAA. I think it's probably above AAA based on what we've seen in certain places or some of the success these guys have had over here. But this seems to be a trend. And to touch upon, you mentioned the Mets, you mentioned the Yankees. I mean, New Yorkers on both sides are pretty upset to see John Heyman tweet out that apparently neither team was very much involved in this, like maybe on the peripheral a little bit, but not really involved very much at all. And obviously, I mean, we tweeted out sleeping bag stuff with Cashman. I said Stearns is joining him. I'm sure a lot of people tweeted that out as well. I don't know. I mean, the Yankees, I kind of get it. I think their pitching staff is in a good place, and maybe they just want one depth piece at the end of that rotation. Should probably be more focused on bullpen. The Mets, I mean, they have a good number of pitchers, but their rotation, we've been saying it since the season ended. The number one thing they have to do is go out and figure out starting rotation pieces. Obviously, they've taken up a whole different path by kind of blowing up the team a little bit. I will say maybe Imai, although he's young and talented, maybe he was not the guy that rotation needs. That rotation already has some young talent in it, like a lot of young talent. So they may actually need a guy like Framber Valdez more, a guy that can come steady at the top of the rotation, and you can be pretty sure he's going to give you tons and tons of innings. So in a way, even though I joke about Stearns joining Brian Cashman in the sleeping bag, they may actually get this one right. It may not be what both teams need. The Cubs apparently were involved, but it turns out Imai had longer offers on the table and went with the one with the opt-outs and the shorter term and the higher AAV. I believe it's now the third highest AAV for a NPB pitcher in history, behind only Yamamoto. And who was the other one? Tanaka. Tanaka, I believe, is the other one. Right. At first, it said second most. I think someone corrected themselves, and it's actually the third highest. So he gets that. I mean, the opt-outs after every single year, pretty fascinating. Kind of reminds me of the Michael King deal with a lot of different ways to go. We could see Imai on the free market next offseason with the likes of Tarek Skubal out there. So, I mean, if he kills it, I think if he has a little bit of a struggle, maybe pitches to around a 4.5 ERA, he'll opt in and be back with Houston there. But yeah, you got to love it for Houston. It's a head scratcher as to why some of these other teams weren't involved. I thought the Phillies were going to pluck this guy. I thought the Cubs might pluck this guy. He goes to the Astros. It's a great win for the Astros, who continue, no matter what, no matter who it is they lose, they seem to be able to just turn the other cheek, move on, and just stick with their business. And you feel like they're still going to be relevant when you felt like maybe, all right, last year was the beginning of them starting to go on a downward trend. All of a sudden, something like this happens and they come a little bit further up. And we'll see. We'll see. I mean, the AL West, most likely everyone's going to be picking the Mariners this offseason, but it's once again a pretty fascinating division going into 2026.
Yeah, the projections were 6-year, $150 million, according to MLB Trade Rumors, who's ranked number 7 in the top 50 free agents. So this discussion of him, you look at his age, you mentioned being on the younger side. He's 27. He'll be 28 in May. You look at his body of work, and I think everyone is kind of looking at that ERA, the 963 and 2/3 innings in Japan, 3.15 career ERA. The early seasons are ugly. You can look at the 2020 season, 6.13 ERA. But that sample size of seeing this different pitcher, it's been about 3 seasons right now. I mean, he is one of the more effective pitchers. As you mentioned before, is it equivalent to Major League Baseball? No. But I think watching what he's done, he's improved steadily year after year. And especially for a place like Houston that has this reputation for fixing pitchers or getting the best out of them, I can imagine this is a great fit for both. And as you mentioned, the upside, yeah, he'll give you production this year. He has the opportunity to go out there and, similar to Murakami, earn himself a lot of long-term stability down the line if he wants to opt out, with the safety net of staying in-house if he wants to continue to work it out. I mean, I look at the 20.7% strikeout minus walk rate, ranked 3rd in MPB. He allowed just 6 home runs all season, a 0.33 home run per 9. That pairs a lot of swing and miss stuff with strong ground ball tendencies. This is a player that can be molded. As we mentioned, there is no direct translation from NPB to MLB, but there is a track record for some of these players, especially looking at the raw stuff and opening up the hood and seeing where mid to upper 90s fastball, he can touch 99 miles per hour. He has a slider, a splitter, and changeup. We talked about this with Jim Allen about him being a competitor. And also, you got to love the fact that he did acknowledge the appeal of joining the Japanese stars like Ohtani and Yamamoto and Roki over in LA. But the quote that everyone's looking at, and can't forget the history between Houston and Los Angeles. I know the affiliations have changed and the Los Angeles Dodgers might have turned heel here, but if you look at the original Dodgers-Astros rivalry that was going on, they hate each other. And go back to the 2017 World Series, and you know, the quote that he had said, I'd rather take them down earlier in the offseason about the Dodgers. What a better fit than the Houston Astros, who there's no lost feelings of desire to beat each other than Houston and LA. And I know it's been kind of dormant a bit. The Dodgers have taken a lot of slings and arrows from a lot of other franchises, but the original beef, if you go back to the emergence of where the Dodgers are, it's the Astros. And I think, as we mentioned before, he's carving his own path. I like everything we heard from Jim Allen here of our interview, and go back and listen to it. It was a really good conversation about him being this unique player and a personality. And like you said, Houston's in a spot right now that this rebuilding window, maybe it's not rebuilding, it will be a retool. 87 wins for a bottom barrel. Like if you're thinking of, they're hitting some bad times. Yeah, they didn't make the postseason last year, but if 87 wins is where you're bottoming out, and then you can add a player like this who could potentially be a guy that could be the ace of a staff going forward. I mean, if you're a Houston fan, you got to be ecstatic here on New Year's Day.
Yeah, one thing I thought of, one thing I would think some pitchers have to pay attention to, and I know Tommy John is all over the league, right? It's a big problem over MLB. But when you see those 4 pitchers that I named before going down with Tommy John surgery for the Astros, like I'm sure pitchers that are looking to sign somewhere look at that, like, what's the health of their pitchers? At least on the outside, I'd worry a little bit if that becomes a trend. I know the Mets were getting, they were in the news a month ago or so when Adam Ottavino was talking about all their bullpen injuries and kind of going at Mendoza for running these guys into the ground. So many guys are going down with Tommy John, right? Well, the Astros had it in the starting rotation, which, I mean, it's not the same because, they're pitching every 5th day, so you can't necessarily say you're running them into the ground, like putting them out there too much. But I don't know if there could be something, the way they have their pitchers throwing on the side or working on things that leads to that. I have no idea. But there is that. I mean, even Javier, who's coming back now, same kind of thing, dealing with big injuries. The other thing I was thinking of actually before the signing went down, I saw that I like to look at like on this date, like what kind of signings or trades were there in the past few years. And about a half hour before this signing went down, I noticed, all right, Yusei Kikuchi back in 2019, coming over from NPB, signed on this day in 2019, January 1st, 2019. Very similar situation. He was basically at his deadline. And the Mariners, who I guess were not thought of as the front runners for his services back in 2019, scoop him up on a very unique deal. So these unique NPB deals are not necessarily a new thing. I just think they're becoming more prevalent. But Kikuchi's deal was something along the lines of a 3-year deal. So, I mean, just like this one, but unique, where there was a 4th-year option on Kikuchi's side, but there was also an option for the Mariners after the 3rd year to add an extra 4 years on the deal and make it a 7-year deal. I don't know if I've seen anything like that since then. And what ended up happening, Kikuchi largely struggled. He had some successes, I believe, made an all-star team, the Mariners, but overall wasn't super impressive in Seattle. And if you look at his NPB stats, I mean, I believe 9 seasons, he pitched to about a 2.7 ERA. So there is that kind of adjustment to MLB that doesn't always go well. But what ended up happening is the Mariners, unsurprisingly, did not pick up the extra 4 years. Everyone thought he would pick up the 4th-year option, like he would opt in. And I believe it was for $13 million. He opted out. And then it took him all the way until like mid-March to sign with the Blue Jays. And obviously he pitched there for a little while, had some successes, and then and people forget this because it was pretty much a short pit stop in Kikuchi's career now. He was traded by the Blue Jays to the Houston Astros. And if you remember his short stint in Houston, Kikuchi was like lights out there. They unlocked something in him. Sure. So I know they're not the same pitcher, right? But all because they're Japanese pitchers, you can't say they're the same guy and the same thing's going to happen. But like those kind of things matter to a degree. If a guy from Japan is watching this other guy, kind of get unlocked in a certain place. Obviously, he didn't end up staying there, but you do have to remember that they unlocked something from Kikuchi. I was surprised he didn't stay there. Ended up signing with the Angels, and he's there now. But that was just something in my head. I just feel like this NPB trend now, and you have to call it a trend because it's happened twice in the matter of weeks, of these guys not getting the major deals that were projected for them. You wonder what this does in the future. We have Okamoto, who is going to decide in a couple days. I mean, he could decide today for all we know. My guess is he's going to get a short-term deal, maybe with some opt-in situations as well. I'd be shocked if he got anything more than 3 years at this point. But Yakyu Cosmopolitan, it was a great account if you're interested in NPB to follow on Twitter, posted the following and saying Tatsuya Imai's posting fee to the Seibu Lions should come out to about $11.3 million, a bit more than what the Dina Base Stars received from Shota Imanaga. The biggest loser from Imai and Murakami getting smaller deals are their respective NPB teams. Oryx, with Yamamoto, got $50 million when Yamamoto was coming over. And to me, that goes back to something we talked about with Jim Allen, as far as NPB teams, front offices, not exactly being big fans of the posting system. And this all goes together. All right. So if we look at the trickle down effect, these guys are signing for less money than was expected when they were posted. What does that result in directly? NPB team that they came from is receiving less compensation. What could that result in? Front offices in the NPB becoming increasingly resistant to posting their players. There's already a club or two that just straight up has a policy that they're never going to do it. That might become more prevalent. That could trickle down to something we just saw recently in the news. Talented young Japanese players who wish to play in MLB one day are going to want to not have to deal with the posting system just in case their teams don't want to post them. Janae Sato just came over to play college ball at Penn State, pretty much strictly to avoid the posting system and end up in the MLB draft directly one day. That is going to become more and more likely if this is what it keeps on happening. And that's going to result in the college product here becoming more relevant. The pipeline is going to be shorter and more stocked with talent as far as MLB goes. And what it ultimately all happens at the bottom, I think the NPB product suffers a little bit. Their relationship with Major League Baseball is going to suffer a little bit. And maybe eventually they have to negotiate a new posting system, because that's not something I think anybody wants as far as that kind of relationship suffering.
No, all very good points. And I think really the finishing piece of this conversation is, does it shake loose the remaining free agents out there? And do we get the pitchers out there that are now looking at the market and maybe other teams seeing where Imai went and figuring out, well, there's a couple more, the Frombers of the world, the Ranger Suarez of the world. Where are they going? It feels like it's coming imminently.
Yeah, I think it has to be. And we said last episode, I felt like these four guys, Imai, Fromber, Ranger Suarez, and Zach Gallen, were in this one basket together. And I felt like at the time that there's three teams that are going to pick from this basket ultimately. And I named the Giants, the Cubs, and the Orioles. Well, Imai wasn't going to one of those teams, apparently. So now I look at those three guys that are still in that basket, in my opinion, Fromber, Gallen, and Ranger Suarez. And I could see a world where they end up on those three teams in no particular order. I won't make the prediction there. We've made some predictions in the past already, but I think you could see that. The one sticking point, I really do think, and I think sometimes where there's smoke, there is fire. We have seen Fromber's name connected to the Mets a couple separate times this offseason. It's like weeks going by between reports. And I think that's going to depend on how many years he goes for. But this trend of these guys getting less years than they hoped for or they were projected for, if Fromber is down to, say, a 3-year or maybe with a 4th-year opt-out, I think the Mets are a very real possibility because he fits what they need so much. I know Stearns doesn't go for older pitching free agents, but he does have a relationship with Fromber from his time in Houston. So there is some kind of firsthand knowledge about Fromber Valdez. So I think when I say Orioles, Cubs, Giants for those three guys, I feel pretty strongly about that. But I think the one sticking point or the one thing that could change that is the Mets grabbing Fromber. I think that is a possibility. I think Mets fans want it at this point. I do think Stearns is legitimately interested. I don't know. Do you have a feeling on where those guys are going next or who signs next?
I mean, I feel like the Orioles have to be there, the finishing pieces. And as we play this game of musical chairs, we mentioned how as they're rebuilding, they're in a win now mode. They need that frontline starter, and it feels like Framber is that guy. And I just, like you mentioned, Ranger Suarez is like, you don't want to be left holding the bag and nothing gets put in it. And I think the O's are in that situation right now where you have to make a decision. He might felt like, especially with that deal and the money spent here with the opt-out situation, maybe that scared other teams away, that the negotiation was like, we don't want to lose him the next year if he has to be paid more. But if you're in a win now, right at this moment, like the O's are, you have to make sure you come around with a top line starter to pair with what you did this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems obvious. Like everyone's praising them. They just feel like they're one move away from just, I mean, their fans wanting to start the season right this second. So I could see it. Ranger Suarez is one of those guys. I feel like he should have like 20 teams kicking the tires on his services, but we'll see. I mean, the Tatsuya Imai one is a big domino to fall, and we're already getting more reports. I mean, just like 20 minutes after the Imai news, you see John Heyman talking about some other stuff, including Bo Bichette, the Yankees apparently being at least a little bit interested. The Yankees also fielding offers for Jazz Chisholm. The Cubs dangling Nico Horner out there once again, and they also are interested in Bo Bichette. So the position player thing, I mean, that is not moving quite as much. I think the pitcher moves. I mean, remember not like 3 weeks ago or something, we thought we had news about Zach Gallen to the Cubs. I think Bob Nightingale once again jumped the gun, and then that was taken aback. I feel like now that the Imai piece has fallen, this next week you're going to see at least one or two of these other starting pitchers sign.
So we mentioned this will be a mini episode, so we're hopping off here pretty soon. We just want to have the conversation about Tatsuya Imai, and we're maybe doing more of these throughout this offseason when news drops and Devin and I are able to link up and get on here at the same exact time and have a conversation. Just want to give a shout out to Armand, is amazing in the chat, saying Happy New Year, and a lot of great comments. We appreciate the support. Happy New Year to you as well. A lot of great conversation, and throughout the offseason, he's mentioning some of the things we're talking about the Astros depth and where they're going from here, and talking about what he believes is the problem with Framber. He says the qualifying offer attached is hurting him, and that might be the case.
Sure.
The draft eligibility and the pipeline, as you mentioned, it is all interconnected, whether it's the posting system, the quicker pipeline. People and teams and front offices are hesitant to give up those assets. And as you mentioned, 32 years old, and you can't forget the drama that happened late last season with the interpersonal stuff with Framber. It definitely looms large because you don't want that being added to your clubhouse. And if you feel like it was a exclusively Astro situation that was happening with Framber, or was this a personality character concern that other teams will have, remains to be seen. But in my opinion, it has to at least hurt the market for him. But we'll see if it starts to break loose. You mentioned Bo, you mentioned Kyle Tucker. These guys are still out here, Cody Bellinger. So we still have a lot more to discuss this offseason.
Yeah, the qualifying offer thing is a good point. When players come with that attached to them and the draft pick compensation, it does, I think, slow the market a little bit, take some teams out of the running, or at least they like to see what these other guys that don't have that attached to them, what happens with them first. And that's another reason the Tatsuya Imai thing is surprising, that he had to kind of settle for a deal a lot lower than projected. He comes over here, you just got to give him cash, right? No qualifying offer attached. You don't have to trade for him and trade pieces away. But he ends up falling to the Astros. Definitely a surprise team that I can say I definitely didn't see coming.
Yeah, and there's also the public relations piece. We mentioned that with the Orioles and the Blue Jays. When you're doing things, your fan base is motivated. And I'm not saying the Yankees or the Mets or any of these dormant teams should make moves just to appease a fan base, but it kind of fits both sides of it, where Imai is, to me, a low risk for especially a big market club that's out there for $18 million a year for a pitcher, even for 1 year. As I mentioned, the direct apples to apples comparison was the Yankees were spending $18.5 million for Marcus Stroman, who is less than effective, to be honest with you, and eventually wasn't with the club. So what are we talking about here? $18 million. Like, to me, it is a win-win for both sides. Like, yes, it is a settlement for Tatsuya Imai that he didn't get the long-term deal, but he's still very much, and if he believes in his stuff, he ultimately will end up with a Yamamoto type of deal, because if he pitches well, he's going to get compensated for it.
Not to mention, yeah. So the Stroman thing is a good one to put out there. And on the other side of New York and Queens, David Stearns paid Frankie Montas 17.5 million for 2 years, and we won't even have his second year of service. Right. That's why I sometimes Met fans get to this point where they are just completely trusting Stearns, and I really want to get there, but you just have to look at last year and are you sure this guy's a genius? Are we sure he's smarter than everybody? Because pretty much everyone questioned that move the second it was made, and we were all right on that one. Yeah, has he been right about some stuff that we didn't expect? I mean, not so much in Queens yet, but in Milwaukee, sure. We'll see if he can get that done here. But yeah, we'll see. I'm very surprised. It's not where I saw him going. Not the surprise team I even expected. And buckle up here. Let's see where Framber goes. Let's see where Ranger goes. Zach Gallen, like I've said before, I think is going to be a better signing than most people believe going forward. So still lots to be done, man. We're January 1st, 2026, spring training just about 6 weeks away, and so many guys without homes right now.
So on our way out the door, make sure you guys follow us on Instagram and on X at Tablesetters Pod. You also can subscribe to us on YouTube as well. If you're watching live over there, give us a like and a subscription over there at Tablesetters Baseball. If you can, leave a 5-star review. As Devin mentioned, this is the first episode of 2026. It was impromptu. It was a mini episode, but we're trying to continue to give you guys consistent content about Major League Baseball, even when the ground is cold and snowy over here in the Northeast and all of those things. And again, want to give an appreciation. You put a post out on X about our achievements this year, and it was cool seeing that in totality about what we were able to accomplish on our little platform that can over here, with having a current Major League player, a couple former Major League players. We got beat writers, people involved in the game, and it's really fun to see as we approach, episode 130, 150, 200, all the things we've accomplished. And I think 2026 is going to be the best one yet.
Yeah, shout out to those 5 countries where we've charted pretty consistently. I mean, obviously ours in the U.S., Canada, and then the 3 countries really we've charted more than anywhere else, more consistently. Finland, Denmark, Japan. Thank you guys so much for listening, no matter where you're listening from. We really appreciate it. We hope you guys enjoy what we do. And hopefully you keep on listening. Come back, tell your friends. We will be here every week, sometimes twice a week, sometimes more, giving you guys as much content as you can handle.
So until that time, we'll be back after a while. And until that time, happy baseball.